Hey folks, it's Pete Thorne. Welcome to my studio. Hey, that track at the beginning of the video was created entirely using presets that I made using the new Guitar Rig 6 software from Native Instruments. So I made a whole bunch of different presets, tracked all those different parts. This video is going to be all about those different presets. I'm going to give you a little commentary on each of them. We're going to listen to those parts soloed outside of the mix so you can clearly hear the individual parts. And then of course I'm giving away these presets. I'm giving them to Native Instruments. If you get Guitar Rig 6 and try out my presets, let me know what you think. I'd love to hear. So when I tracked all the parts from the song in the beginning of the video, it's interesting, it was about a week ago when I did a bunch of them, and I just finished up today with the lead guitar part. And since then, I've actually gone back and tweaked some of the presets. So what you might see when I was actually tracking might be a different picture on the screen as far as the individual effects that were in the preset compared to what I ended up with. And that's the neat thing about using software where you can go back and tweak it later. I mean, you're not printing the sound. It's a plugin that's on the track in your DAW, and you can go back and make tweaks. So these finalized presets, I've gone in and fine-tuned while I was mixing and changed some of the stuff. I used a lot of the new effects like the new reverb, one of the new EQs, new compression, stuff that's included in the latest version of Guitar Rig 6 now that hasn't been available before. I used the new Chicago amp for one of the parts, and then I used a lot of the older previous effects and stuff that were already included in previous versions of the software as well. Okay, so let's break down some of these parts. We'll listen to them soloed outside of the mix, and I'll tell you what I was doing here. So with this first one, this one I call the Ambient Wash, and it's kind of cool. There's a chord that comes in right at the beginning of the song that's panned left a little bit, and then the effects sort of pan over into the right speaker across the field of sound, and I really like that. I used this thing called the Traktor's Peak Filter to kind of give a high upper mid-range boost to the sound. It just made the whole guitar sound clearer. I also used the fast compressor actually after the amplifier, and the amplifier I chose for this is the Twang Reverb. Okay, there's also some tape echo in there. There's a little bit of the psych delay as well, and those are panned to different sides. There's the ice verb, and there's the stereo tune, and it's split, of course, you know, with the dry sound, as I said, in one side, and then the effects on one side, and I use the split mix to do that. Okay, next up is this kind of melody part. It's kind of really the main part in the song, I guess, and I called it Clean Echo Mod Verb Chicago, because I used the new Chicago amp. It's a real simple amp model. It's just two knobs, tone control and a volume control. And I made sure to use the Match Cabinet Pro as well, so the cab that's kind of matched best with this amp. Okay, running in front of the Chicago amp, I've got a noise gate, a noise reduction, as well as the stomp compressor. And then I'm using the ensemble effect for some chorusing after the amplifier. Then I'm running into the VC76, a 76 style compressor. So there's a compressor before the amp as well as after the virtual amp. Sometimes I like to do that, and I'll set them for like different settings, different attack settings. And so I think I've got the fast attack compressor in front, and then I've got the VC76 compressor set for like medium fast attack. Then I'm running into the solid EQ where I'm just adding a little bit of high end, using a high pass filter to just cut the lows at down around 88 Hertz. And then last up, I've got the tape echo. Okay, next up, my clean bass sound. I called this one Clean Bass. So the bass for the beginning of the song when the clean guitar is playing, I wanted it to be just kind of straight up ampy, but basically clean and warm. And I love the sound I got here. I'm definitely going to use some of these bass presets on other projects. I'm using the new Bass Invader amplifier with the Match Cabinet Pro. I've got the VC76 compressor then coming after the cabinet. It's pretty straightforward, not too much going on here. Oh, and I'm also using the fast compressor in front of the amplifier. So once again, I got a bit of compression happening in front, coming right out of the bass guitar into the compressor, and then after the amp and cab into the VC76 compressor. Compressor before, compressor after. Just use a little bit of each, and you get this great, maybe slightly more complex compression character than you would if you just use one or the other. Okay, next up is my dirty bass sound for the second half of the tune. Once the kind of dirty plexi sounding guitar kicks in, I wanted a bass sound that had a little bit of crunch on the top end. So I split the bass actually using the AB splitter. And what I'm doing is running a Bass Invader amp, and it's just for clean. And then I'm running actually the Van 51 amp on the other side of the split. They're both pan center, and the Van 51, I've got all the low end rolled out basically, and I'm using it just for some distortion. Split mix here, I've got the slider down favoring the clean sound mostly. So I mean, it's basically 75% clean with about 25% of the grind mixed in, and that sounded about right to me. Okay, another thing I'm doing is I'm using a couple of shelving EQs, and before the Bass Invader, the clean amp, I'm rolling off a bunch of the top end. So right at about 500 or 600 hertz, the top end starts to roll off. So the clean amp is mostly just low end. And then I'm using another shelving EQ before the dirty amp, and it's rolling off at right about, I don't know, maybe 180 or something like that. It starts to roll off lows. And by just distorting kind of the top end frequencies and blending those in, it helps keep the sound tight. So nice and warm and clean on the lows, and then distorted on the top end. And last but not least, I got the VC76 compressor coming up last to just give me a few dB of gain reduction at the end of the chain. Okay, next up, I was really happy with this tone. I used the Jump amp, which I think is kind of like a jumpered plexi style amp, I think is what it's supposed to be. And I'm boosting it actually with a treble booster coming first in the chain. Although I've got the bright dial the ways back on the treble booster, and the boost is up around 1030, something like that. So it's just kicking the front end of the amp a little bit. It's not too bright, but it's definitely a treble booster kind of effect. What it's doing is just driving the amp into a clean kind of overdrive that stays tight. If I crank up the gain on the amp more, it'll tend to get a little bit looser and be that kind of looser distortion. But with the treble booster in front and boosting the front end of the amp, you're able to keep the low end a little tighter and get the grind that you want, and the level of gain and distortion that you want. I'm using the Match Cabinet Pro. I've got just a little bit of the room mixed in. I think I've got it at about, let's see, yeah, 10% room. So it's mostly just the close mic. And by the way, these Match Cabinets, they seem to work just great. So it couldn't be simpler. I mean, you just pick the one that goes with the amplifier, you get an A or a B setting, and then you can blend in as much room or close mic as you want. The Match Cabinets, they all seem to sound good with the amps that they're supposed to go with. Right at the end of the chain, I've got the new Solid EQ, and with that, I'm just dialing up the high end just a little bit, around 6K, I think, just adding a little bit of top end. I also dialed back some mids a little bit, and I dialed back some lows just a little bit. I'm using both the high pass filter and low pass filter to just lop off a little bit of lows and a little bit of top end just to kind of finish the sound, really. Okay, now really similar sound when the solo guitar kicks in. I split hard right and left with a pair of Dirty Rhythm guitars playing kind of the same part that I was doing with the Jump amp. The Jump amp's still up the middle, but I brought the volume down of it in the mix, and so I've got kind of just an even rhythm bed. It's the Van 51 amp, and in front I've got the treble booster, once again kicking the front end, just tightening things up, adding a little bit of aggressive top. I ran the bright control on the treble booster up a little bit higher on this one to get a little bit more drive and a little bit more teeth. Using the Match Cabinet Pro, once again, I've got a little bit of room mixed in. This one's at 15% room. And then I'm using a graphic EQ actually at the end of the chain here, and also a little reflector at the end of the chain, just to add a little bit of reverb, a little bit of small room reverb, and also just fine tune the EQ of the amp using the EQ. I just sucked out a little bit of mids and just made it, basically what I was doing was leaving a little bit of room for the lead guitar, which is midier and whatnot, to really poke through, suck out some of those mids, but keep the low end full and stuff for the rhythm guitars. It just makes them sit in the mix real nice. Okay, last up's the lead guitar sound here. I was really happy with this. It was really fun to play through, actually. I got a ripping lead sound, I think. I used the Fire Breather amp and I used the Screamer in front. So much more like, you know, tube Screamer style drive into a gainy modded amp. I've got the amp gain almost cranked, and I'm running the drive at about 11 o'clock on the Screamer. I use the Fire Breather Matched Cabinet Pro, and I've got about, I think, 15 or 20% room mixed in. And I'm actually using the B-Cab preset here for this one. It sounded a little midier, giving me the mids to kind of poke right through the rhythm guitars. For some echo, I'm using the Tractor's Delay, and it's a stereo ping-pong kind of thing, but not like a halftime ping-pong or anything. It's a slightly offset sort of tempo, and it just sounded really good. And then I'm using the new ROM Airy reverb to just add a little bit of verb to the sound. So a little bit of reverb, a little bit of ping pong delay. And with the Screamer in front of the Fire Breather amp, sounded just great for this ripping solo part. So thanks for watching my video on Guitar Rig 6, and I hope you dig the presets that I came up with for this. I hope you get to give them a try. There's a couple other things that I haven't talked about that I've always really liked about Guitar Rig. One that's got a built-in metronome. That's really cool for practicing. As well as the built-in tape deck feature. I haven't talked about that at all in this video, but I used to use that all the time. Essentially, it was like a simple phrase trainer that allowed you to load in audio files for you to jam along with, and it was really great for learning music and just for jamming over jam tracks or anything like that. So that's a really nice feature about the software as well that they've had in there for a long time. So thanks to the folks at Native Instruments for having me do this. It was a lot of fun. Click down there in the video description below on the link that's down there. It'll take you to all the info you could ever possibly want to know about Guitar Rig 6 from Native Instruments. Please hit subscribe if you haven't yet. Hit the little bell beside the subscribe. You will get an alert every time I put out a new video. Come back and see me for more videos real soon. I'm Pete Thorne. Thanks for watching. Take care. Over and out.